This is Out of Order, James Kalita from the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, reminding you that the podcast you are listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the Slayer of Non-Threats, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath, you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. For the reloaders in the audience, I've got a question for you. Have you ever ordered reloading supplies online? If so, who do you call when you need help or you need something special? When you call, do you talk to a customer service rep or can you talk to the owner? Well, if you'd prefer a personal touch and great customer service, talk to my friend Jim Swindle at US Reloading Supply. Jim is a retired law enforcement officer who's been reloading since 1972, and he founded US Reloading Supply back in 2014 as a family operated business focusing on helping shooters get the components that they need at the best prices. If you've got a special order, large quantities, or something you can't find at another website, call them for a quote and they will help you find what you need at a great price. Get all the top brands, get 100% satisfaction guarantee, never pay sales tax, and get free shipping on all non-hazmat items. Check them out online at usreloadingsupply.com. That's usreloadingsupply.com. Or call them today, 941-451-7357, and tell them you heard about it on Unload and Show Clear. Our special guest today is John Horvath from Hebron, Indiana. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Well, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us about Hebron and what you do there for a living.
I don't do anything in Hebron, to be honest. I actually work. We're about an hour from Chicago,
Okay.
so I actually work in Chicago. I'm in the live audio event production business. I'm basically a live sound engineer and have been so since professionally since probably 1996. But I started doing it in about '89, so close to 30 years now. So.
Very cool. What kind of events?
Started doing local bands, basically. That's how it started back in high school in the late 80s, doing local bands. And I was always a very technical guy. I was always the guy that tore apart the equipment and got into everything to see how it worked and modified things. And it developed into doing it professionally, about 7 or 8 years later. So since about 96, I've been doing that full time. So I have my own company, and I toured a little bit back in the 90s and didn't really enjoy that. I wanted to be home, and so kind of built my own company in the mid to late 90s, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So
very cool. Only events there in the Chicagoland area, or all over the region, or what kind of how much coverage have you got there?
Most of my work, I stayed in Northwest Indiana for about probably 20 years or so, just doing the as much of the higher end work as I could do in Northwest Indiana. And then I joined. I lost my parents back in 2013 and kind of lost a little bit of the drive to be a business owner. And I was working 70, 80 hours a week trying to be a business owner, and didn't really want to work myself to death anymore. So I joined the Local 2 stagehands in downtown Chicago. And Local 2 is probably I think they're the second largest stagehands union in the world. And so now I basically get a text on my phone. It tells me where to be. I go there, I do my magic, and I come home, and a check shows up in the mail. So I love it.
There you go.
I love it. So,
no more of the headaches of business ownership. That's pretty cool.
Yes, definitely. There's not a lot. In fact, there's absolutely nothing in the business that I work in that has anything to do with IDPA or shooting or anything. I've met a lot of people and gained a lot of good friends though through the production industry who do shoot. So it's interesting for sure to find all the musicians and the production people that are into shooting.
That is interesting. So how did your interest in guns and shooting, where did that come from?
Well, my dad was in the Army back in the 60s, and I grew up with one gun in the house. There was a little 38 Special Charter Arms that was in a long underwear drawer, and I was told to stay away from it. And of course, like any curious young boy, I probably shouldn't have, but I went and played around with it when I was younger. And, I don't know how old I was, but I remember shooting it in my backyard a number of times, probably when I was early teens. Probably in the probably 92 or 93. I was making decent money working construction at the time and went and bought my first gun, which was a SIG 226. And so it didn't basically just I was a backyard shooter at the time, and then around 96 or so when I built my business, I sold pretty much my last gun. I think the gun I was on at the time was a Beretta. I sold that, and I did not shoot at all for about 13 or 14 years. And I just got back into it about 2000, probably about 2014, maybe 2015. I just got back into this. So,
and was the break because of you just didn't have time with all the trying to run a business, or?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. I didn't have time, and then after my parents died, I moved into my childhood home, and after a year of living here, I noticed a few things were stolen from the yard. And I kind of realized it was not, it wasn't just my home anymore. I had to take care of the house. So,
right.
It was time to get something to protect myself and my family. And that's pretty much what started it. I ended up with an M&P 9, on a trade deal, and that's how it all started.
So, how did you hear about competitive shooting, and how did you get involved in that? Did somebody tell you about it, or did you see it on a lot of people see videos, or how did you find out about competitive shooting in your area?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll elaborate. A good friend of mine, a very well-known sound engineer in the business, Tony Luna, was an instructor for Hank Iverson Tactical Systems. And Tony is a touring sound engineer, and we were friends on Facebook, and I started seeing his posts, and he was teaching and doing a lot of shooting, and it just grew from there. He did a class, and he did a class probably, I don't know, maybe sometime 2015, and I took his class, and it was basically the Hank Iverson system, which is fantastic. And I learned, when I left that class, I realized how much I didn't know before. And it was excellent. I mean, almost everyone in that class, goes from zero to hero. It's fantastic. So, and then it just evolved from there. I think I was much closer friends with Tony at that point because we were shooting and working in the business together. And then one morning he called me and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And I'm like, nothing really. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. He goes, "Well, get dressed. We're going to shoot IDPA." And that was, we went to a local club here, which I'm now a member of. And actually I am the match director at that club. We went to that club and I shot my first match, and that's what started it all. A Saturday morning phone call.
Well, before we you tell us a little about memories from that first match, give us a shout out for your home club that where you are the match director.
That's North Porter County Conservation Club in Chesterton, Indiana. It's a 23-acre facility. We have nine bays, probably 3 or 4 40-yard bays, some 25-yard bays, and we have a 100-yard rifle bay, and we're working on a 200-yard rifle bay, but we don't have enough dirt. So, if you know anybody looking to get rid of some clay and some fill, we need it. So
got no shortage with all the construction going on down here in Texas. So
that's the long way to go with some dirt.
Right. So tell us about that first IDPA match. What do you remember from? Because you'd had the training class, which is a step ahead of a lot of people who show up for their first IDPA matches. How did that translate into your performance?
I remember. I think there was about maybe 30 or 35 shooters there, if I remember correctly. And I didn't place all that well. I was probably maybe, I don't know, somewhere in the middle, I believe, maybe 15th or somewhere in 15 to 20th. And one of the things I remember the most is when I took the class, they had talked about retention shooting in the class. In the class that I took, we didn't get into the retention shooting. That was in what they called the level 2 class. Mm-hmm. But when they the very first stage was you had to shoot 3 guys from retention, and I had no idea what it was, and they told me what to do, and I did it, and it went really well. And so that's just one of the things I remember was, almost taking a class on retention shooting, and then, a couple weeks later, here I get to do it, on the fly. So
how often do you get out and shoot the club matches?
Before I became match director, it was probably, I shot New Buffalo, Michigan. I shot their match probably maybe once a month, and I shot the North Porter County match once a month. So, and then there's another club here in Michigan City, Indiana, that does a Wednesday night defensive pistol shoot it's about 2 hours a night, and I usually shoot that every couple of weeks. So
very cool.
So I've been shooting a lot, and I took the SO class, and then they were the match director at North Porter County had been doing it for about 10 years, and he kind of retired. Another guy picked up the ball, and it didn't work out with him, and they had to have somebody else come in and take over. And I had just became a member of the club, and I offered to help the old match director that had been there about 10 years. I offered to help, and he told me he was going to work with me for the rest of the year so I can really learn the system and how they do things. And about 3 months in, he was like, "Okay, it's all you." So once again, I was thrown into the mix, and it's been going really well. I built a website. And added a Facebook group, and it's been going really well. The matches were averaging, I don't know, probably 20 to 30 shooters. And now just with the social media stuff that I've been doing, the website and the constant promotion of the matches, we're averaging 40 to 60 shooters now per match.
Very good. Very good. So talk about how you what's all involved. I mean, did you have any idea what you were getting into when they just sort of dropped it in your lap, or I mean, had you just been showing up and helping set up in the mornings and tear down after?
Basically, yeah. I mean, again, being a super hands-on and super technical guy, and being in the production industry, I really, I had a grasp right off the bat of the, I guess you'd call it the back end of things, and how things are assembled, and how many hours it takes to set up all those barrels, walls, and targets. And, I had a respect for it, and that basically just grew into one day me going, I could totally do this, and
Right.
I think I would be rather good at it. So, I thought it would be, I actually, I overestimated it for sure. I thought it would be a lot easier than it is. So it has been difficult to say the least. Probably because, I like to design stages that, and I like to design all my stages, by the way. I try not to go to various websites like Trident Stage Designer. I try not to just grab stages off the internet. I always try to design my own that have some form of educational experience.
Right.
When you go to Trident, there's like 6,000 plus stages on there, and 5,950 of them are, it looked like some guy was just playing around with the program. So, targets everywhere and walls everywhere, and it just, they're either way too elaborate or way too minimal, and they don't have an educational component to them. And me being an instructor myself, I always try to have I always try to have something per stage that you can take away from the stage after you shoot it. That's not totally just about fun.
Very cool. So talk about that a minute. So when you're building a stage, or you're sitting down and designing, what is that process like? And do you try to incorporate that instructional piece of it, something different in every stage, or what do you give us an idea of how that might work?
Since I became the guy back in April, I've probably designed, we usually do about 5 stages per match. And basically I just take a look at the components in Trident, and I don't want to add too much of the same thing, try to break them up, try to make the stages seem a little more realistic in terms of making them defensive in nature. IDPA is the Defensive Pistol Association. So,
Amen.
I've shot a lot of matches where it's like USPSA light, and,
right.
that's great and all, and those are a lot of fun, and, but you can't really take too much home there. You can't really practice your cover. One thing is hardcover.
Right.
You got partial. I like to have partials hanging out where they actually have to aim. I use a lot of hardcover. I use a lot of no shoots and a lot of steel when I can. So, and there's also the part of in not making the stage too difficult to set up for the staff. One issue with me is I'm always working on Saturdays. Our matches are on Sundays, so the help that I have at North Porter County is fantastic. I mean, I literally give them the drawings of the stages, and they set it all up for me, and I just show up on Sunday morning and basically just final tweak. So
right.
I have an amazing staff at North Porter County. We have about 8 to 10 people that are extremely dedicated to the sport. So
very cool. Very, very good. So how does one thing you talked about a moment ago, your experience with the production, the sound production work that you've done, it sounds like that has a benefit for you, or there's a correlation between your experience there and you've been able to put that to use in designing stages and setting up and running matches.
Yes. What's really helped is 30 years of being in the production industry. I don't get nervous. People probably tell me that I do, but I don't really get nervous. So it's I can look at a stage and break a stage down pretty good. And I can run through the stages fairly well and not get too nervous. In the beginning, I did, because I really didn't know too much about the sport itself. But Situational awareness, having, being defensive in nature and learning what I've learned from classes and, just situational awareness, being able to look around and see everything and basically break it down and get through it,
Right.
I see a lot of guys to this day that, they get up to the line and, load and make ready, and they're super, super nervous, and I always try to tell those people, just breathe, just take it easy and breathe. We are here to have fun and, no reason to be nervous.
Now, the mental side of the game is huge. I'm not going to butcher the Yogi Berra quote, but it takes a while, seems like, especially for the new shooters to figure out the mental, or at least to get a handle on the mental part of it, and not psych themselves out when they get up to the line. And just, I used to get I would carry bad stages from one to the next, and
Right.
I'd get up to the line, and the SO would say, are you ready? And I would say, I guess, or ready as I'll ever be. And that mental component. Once I figured that part of it out, and I haven't figured the game out, but just getting past that part of it and saying, okay, I can do this.
Yep.
Is huge.
Yep, exactly. Just basically being able to kind of, I do better, to be honest, I do better when I don't walk through the stage too much and don't overthink it, Overthinking is it seems to be, a big problem. Not so much, with the USPSA guys, because those guys really can, they plan out their every move, every single move they do. And in my experience, if I don't plan an IDPA stage to the T, it seems like I shoot it better because I'm not overthinking it. That does go back to me working in the production industry and being what I say a natural born troubleshooter. I try not to panic if a piece of equipment doesn't work. We'll figure it out. We're going to get through it. It's not the end of the world. So some of that definitely carries over. And then, training with my friend Tony and the Hank Iverson system has helped immensely as well. In those classes, they talk a lot about the mindset and about just breathing and what happens to the body in a defensive situation, in a life-threatening situation. What happens to the human body? Your heart rate goes up 3 times, and your breathing rate goes up 3 times, and you lose fine motor skill. And then, even in the extreme senses, you have tunnel vision and what we call auditory occlusion, where your ear canals, your hearing basically goes away. So if you can learn to, breathe, it's basically how do you fix all of that? Well, you fix all that by breathing. You have to keep yourself calm.
Right.
So basically, one of the things we always tell people is just to breathe, take deep breaths, breathe, and you can mitigate all of those situations.
If only I had known that, the buzzer brain wouldn't have killed my first match.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the buzzer, the blue memory eraser box, yeah.
Exactly.
Again, don't overthink it. Just glance at the stage, do a quick walkthrough, and here we go.
Yep. So as we kind of wind things down here, how much are you getting? How much practice are you doing personally, and how much when you're running these matches are you getting a chance to shoot them yourself, or are you busy kind of managing everything and making sure everything's running smoothly?
I shoot quite a bit, actually. I'm probably at the range probably 2 to 3 days a week. And again, owning my own business, affords me that luxury. I have a number of days off during the week that I can go to the range.
Right.
On average, I probably shoot maybe anywhere between 150 to 200 rounds per when I go to the range. Maybe, like I said, 2 to 3 times a week. At the matches, I always try to shoot. One of the reasons I got into this is because it's fun and it's exciting, and I want to be able to experience that. And, my wife saw how fun and exciting it was, and she wanted to learn how to shoot. So she became an NRA range safety officer, and she got her IDPA safety officer cert, and she comes to matches, and she, me and her are the SOs on our squad. And so she takes a lot of the pressure off of me, and I take, when she wants to shoot, it's, I'm the SO when she's shooting. So we are a fantastic team for sure. And that helps out. Awesome. So we both get a chance to shoot, and it's fun,
That's awesome. So what is it that, the final question I always like to ask, what is it about this sport? You're dedicating so much time to it. You, instead of, handing off this responsibility to somebody else, you've taken the ball and run with it, and you're really putting a lot of effort into putting together, it sounds like, great matches where you're not only just, running around shooting the gun, but you're actually learning lessons at the same time. The effort that all this takes, the time that it takes, what is it that keeps you doing it? Why is it what is it about IDPA that you're passionate about, that you love so much?
I love to see shooters get better. That's basically it. I love helping people out. I love being an instructor. I'm an NRA instructor. And I worked a little bit, like I mentioned, Hank Iverson a number of times. I worked with them and worked with Tony helping out. We've taught a lot of classes before, a lot of defensive pistol classes before, and I absolutely love to see people get better. I had been shooting, like I said, back in the 90s and through, I took about 13 years off, but being a very technical guy, it's kind of given me the ability to break things down maybe a little bit easier than people who might not have the type of jobs or work that I do. Let's just say you work in an office for 40 to 50 hours a week. You don't get to mess around with your guns during the day. You don't get to dry fire during the day as much as I do. You don't get to take your guns apart and modify them anywhere near as much as a guy that basically works from home and works out of his shop at home. So
right.
I love to spread the knowledge that I've learned and the stuff that I have basically figured out through years of doing this. So I'm basically in this, I'm in this to help people. I love seeing shooters, the shooters that started coming earlier this year to my matches. They're already getting better. Seeing them climb up in the rankings. At the end of the match, we go to practice score and we look at it and like, wow, look at this kid, man. He was way down in the list, 3-4 months ago, and now he's way up there. So, I don't take credit for that. Everybody's got to practice, of course, but I love seeing people climbing up and people getting better and their grips getting better and their trigger press getting better and all that stuff. So.
Very cool.
Yeah, I just love it. I'm gonna keep being the match director as long as I continue to have the support that I have coming from the club. If those guys go away, man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it.
Yep, there's a lot that you do as a shooter that you don't see that goes on behind the scenes, and good to be appreciative of all the people who make it possible when you go out and have a fun match. Always make sure that you thank your match director and your SOs because they make all that fun possible. And John, thank you so much for everything you're doing, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I really do appreciate it. And it was great getting to know you a little bit.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Lloyd.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.